Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, in theory, but in practicality, we are going to be talking about in theory on this episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. In theory, you're following us on Facebook. It's All Been Tricked Before. It's spelled just like it sounds. Go find us. It's All Been Tricked Before there. Engage with us there. We've got a lot of people. We got a lot of people talking to us out there, liking what we're doing. Get in with us. Check it out. It's All Been Tricked Before on Facebook. And in theory, we're talking about in theory, actually in practice, we're talking about in theory on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. In theory, your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith, hypothetically.
Jimmy-Jerome. Just wanted to get the references out of the way because you're already doing it before we even started recording. This is going to be worse than a matter of perspective, I think.
Well, that's a matter of perspective.
But in theory, this could end up being more you are often used. We're here to talk about the episode in theory. Give me your first impressions.
I think it did what it needed to do eventually. Wasn't sure how it was going to get there, but I think it accomplished some important things eventually. And Data getting advice from the rest of the crew was a good way to integrate them, however briefly, and even advance their characters a bit. I mean, not a lot, but just a little flavor. So
yeah, it did what it needed to do. Was the way Data went about it as well. Yeah, I wrote early on. I think I wrote Data and Love episode ? And then update. Yes, the B storyline was nebulous to say the least. It was, but yeah, and I thought it was enough to maintain my interest. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites. Early on I thought it might get really interesting, and instead I thought it still had some good insights into Data, and like he said with the other characters, the way each of them not only view love but also the relationship with Data and everything. But I thought it could have gotten to a much better place. I feel like we've had better, and I know I'm the outlier on this one. I thought the one with Asharia, I thought that relationship was more interesting because I thought it got into his relationship with Tasha and it got his relationship with Asharia, which I thought was complicated. And which I related to, which may be why I feel strong about that episode. I wanted this episode to get more to that point. And maybe again, that's like a lot of relationships. Some relationships are like that, and some relationships like this, where it's like, oh, we had a brief moment and then we moved on. So, and yeah, but we'll get into the particulars. We'll get into the who's right, who's wrong.
I'm always right. You're always wrong.
No, I meant in the show.
I admit my expectations were relatively low looking at the description last week.
Yeah.
I had opined that I hadn't seen it at that time. Now I'm thinking maybe I have. I just didn't find it very memorable. Mm-hmm. But my expectations were low going in, and I think that helped because I actually liked the episode. Yeah. I'm not trying to put it at the top of the season by any means, but I enjoyed it.
You're not trying to, but it might end up there anyway.
No. I think it's a middle of the pack episode. We'll see when we get to ranking. Maybe a lower middle. I don't know. We'll see. But it wasn't bad. I found it enjoyable. Found it interesting. I found Jenna super annoying, but we'll talk about that. But I liked what it did for Data. And
I think you and I are lining up for annoyance in the episode, Jimmy, based on that statement.
I think the issue ended up being, in retrospect, that they were trying to be more of a comedy episode. Or at least they were playing a lot of things for comedy when they didn't really have to. But they still backed into some important points about AI.
And again, I know in my brain, I always think Data's more ahead than he is. And maybe I'm attributing more things to him through my eyes, watching him. I feel like he's grown more than they represented, I guess. Because I feel like they took him back to base one, but we know he had a relationship with Tasha of some, it was the naked.
He had a hookup with Tasha. He had a relationship.
But then we have her funeral where he talks about, we have that great moment with him and Picard at the end and stuff. So I feel like this is like, well, we're just going to take him back to square one to an extent.
It's funny you bring up Legacy and Ishara because this episode was written by Joe Menosky, who wrote Legacy, the Tasha Yar episode. He also wrote Clues and First Contact this season, as well as The Nth Degree. He co-wrote it with Ron D. Moore, who's one of our regular top guys. So they definitely called upon some of the same stuff they had before. And I think you're right, Stephen, that there are parallels that can be drawn positively or negatively to how Data related to Ashara as he did to Jenna here.
Well, it's funny you should say that about the writing, as that was going to be my next point, which is something I bemoan quite a bit, I think, through the series. And especially as we keep bringing up the same thing about Data, they make that point occasionally that he misses things, or that they find ways for him to say things that you're going, well, yeah, that means you are human. Mm-hmm. And you keep wanting them to stop skirting around it. But then you also have to take into account like all the different actors or writers and directors who keep touching the character and just doing whatever they feel like doing, or putting their understanding on it. And I think that writing an android or an AI is not easy, and I don't think a lot of people would necessarily have the technical background to really do it right, or to really. Yeah.
So Ron Moore wrote Data's Day as well. So the writers of both the major Data episodes reunite here. But I think he figured out how to write artificial intelligence much better by the time he got to the Cylons of Battlestar Galactica.
Well, and I think to your point, Keith, we had the same issue with TOS with Spock, where some people, they figured out, they took notes, whatever you want to say, and they were like, this guy's a complex human Vulcan. And then other people are like, no, I'm just going to write the Vulcan part. He's like a computer. He's like a robot. And that is it.
Yeah.
Again, I know Galileo 7 is some people's one of their favorite episodes, and it is not one of mine. Although having rewatched it again recently, it is still a pretty good episode. But that's one of those where it's like, no, this isn't the guy that's been going on the first 15 episodes. This guy's done, there's some other stuff going on there, but anyway, I bogged us down right off the bat.
I think the writers the viewpoint that won out for the writers on the next gen is that Data does not really evolve or grow the way we want him to. I think the outliers are the writers that tried to make him actually show that major growth.
Yeah, and I guess it gets back to AI too, and our theories about how AI will develop. Is it well, I have to program this in here, or is it's learning and it's fixing those things and developing, which maybe that's why the Borg ends up being such a huge part of it, is because the Borg is, as we know, they're constantly adjusting and everything. So,
well, I think the Orville did a very interesting take on it. We've mentioned this before.
Yeah,
but it's been a while that they had a AI android that seemed like it was growing, but then revealed no, it had not grown. And you have to think that has to be inspired by Seth MacFarlane wanting to tell his own version watching these Data episodes.
That came to mind watching this episode very much so, yeah.
Yeah, I loved those. This also goes back to, I think, one of the core problems that happens with the series, overestimating the value of human emotion. Sometimes even overestimating the complexity of human emotion to the point of putting it on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a lot simpler than they try to, in the sense that people want things for certain reasons. And there are chemical processes, and it's not so magical that nothing can possibly approach wanting to react in similar ways for similar reasons.
I think Jenna here points out the simplicity of human emotion, among other simple things about humans. And I'm not woman bashing, I'm Jenna bashing, just to be clear.
I think Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy would object to the way Keith just described emotion, but I think he's probably right.
Yeah, well, that's it. The embodiment right there. That all those Spock things, all those condescending kinds of, you don't
all
get it.
All the souls I encountered, his was the most human.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
Insult him in your eulogy, by all means. So we get to the beginning of the episode starts in this torpedo room, which I thought was a cool set. I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. It's a redressed set of another room, but I liked it. My first thought is Data's talking to Jenna, and she says, Data, we're friends and all that. Data has a lot of female friends that we don't know about. First, Keiko, because Data's Day. It's like, oh, this is longtime friend.
Right.
Oh, right.
And now we have Jenna DeSora, played by Michelle Scarabelli. She's best known for Alien Nation, where she played a lead character, Seven Little Monsters, and this is her only Trek credit, but she is still an active actress. She played Martha Kent recently in the new CW show Superman and Lois that premiered in 2 episodes.
Jimmy, I was sure I would find a Seinfeld appearance, and there wasn't, but you'll appreciate this. She was Abby Morgan's mom on Dawson's Creek.
Ah, yes.
So that excited me because I always loved Abby Morgan.
Yes.
Gone too soon.
Absolutely.
Spoiler.
When we finish, I think by this point, when we finish, It's All Been Trek Before Dawson's Creek is the obvious next series. When Jenna calls Data sweet in that opening scene, he just gives her a nod like, yeah, obviously I'm sweet.
I didn't catch that.
I wrote this, and it might have been around this time. It was when I first wrote down Data and Love episode, but I know I've heard people use this term recently, and I just saw my best friend's wedding. Rupert Everett plays her gay best friend, and that's what I wrote down. It was like, Data is everybody's gay best friend. And whatever that term means, exactly. But it seems like it's like, because he's not putting the moves on him. He's a good listener, whatever. For all those cliches that you would adorn with gay best friend.
Yeah. The scene after the torpedo room is they're performing a concert, which I've got several notes about. But Keiko is playing the concert, and so is Jenna, and so is Data. And so I'm like, is he their friend because they're all in this group together? That would have been nice. Are they all in this group together because they're his friends?
Going back to the top for a moment, the first note that I wrote was you could see the transference play on Jenna's face when she did talk about the fireworks thing.
Yeah.
As if Data caused these fireworks. Just this whole, I don't know.
I knew we were in trouble with Jenna when her ex-boyfriend's name was Jeff. I mean, not to disparage, I know plenty of good Jeffs, but for whatever reason, a Jeff in the 24th century to me just spells trouble right away.
What about Jeffrey? Oh no, that's the actor, not the character. Jeffrey Hunter played Captain Pike.
Of course. He's a Jeffrey, I was, for whatever reason, I spent a good 10-12 seconds on, is it Jeff with a Geoff?
Oh, that's a good question.
And then of course there's the tube guy. Who's that guy?
Matt Jeffries, the artistic designer. They named the tubes for him.
Well, to be fair, he's also a Matt, so I don't know. That these I guess no, all right. I mean, we I guess we do have plenty of present day American English names.
Yeah.
In the series.
Well, and that's what I thought. It was like, well, you have Will Riker and all that stuff, but still, I don't know why Jeff just sticks out to me.
Will was a name 400 years ago. It's not unthinkable that it's still a name 400 years from now.
Yeah, right.
James Kirk, James Daly, James St. James, 2000.
Leonard McCoy.
And Tiberius, of course.
Well,
that's timeless.
There's a bigger crowd for that concert than the plays and things we've seen. But none of the senior staff are there, which makes I wonder if they're just burned out of his concerts, or maybe this is a sold out crowd and it's a really popular concert.
Right. They couldn't get in.
Yeah, the captain just isn't popular enough to get into a concert.
No, it's their shift. They couldn't get off.
I wanted to, as a band member for all through middle school, high school, college and stuff, I really wanted to see if how many of them were faking or not. Mm-hmm. But I kept focusing on Keiko. I don't know why. She was definitely faking.
Yeah.
The clarinet. Well, clarinet's my instrument, so still.
I thought the flautist
off of her because her faking was so bad that I did not check for the others, but I assume they were all probably faking.
I thought the flautist looked like she was faking it. Like, I mean, the first person they put. That was her, wasn't it? Yeah. The first scene, it just looked like.
I thought about rewinding and studying them all and decided it wasn't worth it.
So she says she thought she was rushing afterwards. Yes. And all I could think of, I don't know, have you guys seen Whiplash?
Yes.
All I could think of was, were you rushing or were you dragging? Were you rushing or were you dragging?
We needed a J.K. Simmons cameo in there.
We did. That's all I could think about there. So
that was just a clumsy metaphor for how she's going to act the rest of the hour, though.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't think about it at the time until you say it.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, what an
Oh God.
Next Gen tends to do that.
So many of those in this episode. Yeah, I missed that. You're right.
I did too until you brought it up. Now it's obvious in retrospect.
My next note actually kind of points to this because men are androids, women are from Venus. And I was like, but I wrote it then because I was like, it might be one of those funny, whatever. Especially around this time, every comedian is like, let me tell you, men, they're like that, and women are whatever. And then later when they get into the fighting or whatever, I was like, ugh, we got there. We actually got to wait. For once, Jenna woman-splains the first time in history. Probably not, but she woman-splains to Data how love and all this works. And I'm like, he's better at it than you are. Or relationships anyway. Maybe not love, but relationships.
Well, we're gonna have to get to that specifically at some point, I think, because I'm not sure what you're meaning just yet, at least not that part.
I've got thoughts on that, but
yeah.
Well, going back just a bit, we see that she and Keiko are both in this orchestra with, or the quartet. So
quintet.
Okay, yeah. Do you think that this would have been a better story if they had sprinkled this character in somewhere before?
Yes.
Or okay, well, that was easy.
Almost any story that focuses on a junior crewman would be better if they had shown that character before.
Yeah,
that's just
and it's
point
always, yeah, and it's always, I know I'm never going to see this person again, and that's not a knock on TNG because TOS was the same way, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, most series in general like this, that's just the way they did things, and it felt weird in some cases, especially like these. But what can you do?
And I guess
like that eventually some of those like actors that just hang around for a while eventually get something, and I really appreciate when a show does that.
And I guess that goes back to my original point of some relationships are short, and then so maybe he and Jenna don't hang out again, or maybe they work on some projects here and there. But it makes me think of showmances. When this happens a lot, people are in shows together and like, oh man, and they hang out real close for the 6-8 weeks they're in the show, and then hey, you know what? I'll see you around, and that's fine, and you're my best friend, and then you move on, or you get married to them. It's a wide range.
So after they finish the concert, they're hanging out at the cast party or concert party, whatever. It's four of them. Their double date thing. Where Jenna's spawning all over Data in a ridiculous and disgusting manner. But Keiko steals the annoyance in that scene because her story about the sock, she is just way too into. Oh my God, he leaves his socks and then I pick them up and then I'm always going to pick them up. So I didn't pick them up. But you know what? Guess what? You're never going to believe this. He didn't pick them up. Can you believe it? Like, it was just so bad. I love Keiko O'Brien. That is my least favorite scene I think I've ever seen from her.
I wrote androids are from Mars and women are from Venus is during that conversation. Yeah.
I guess that's so it's strange to me that I didn't have quite the same reaction to that. It's a very specific thing that she was zeroing in on, but I think that applies broadly to lots of things like that, lots of habits that couples have to deal with, especially when it comes to housekeeping.
My problem wasn't the story. My problem was the enthusiasm with which she delivered it. I thought she overblew it way too much. She could have been much more casual, and I would have appreciated it a lot more.
We've never seen a messy quarters.
Not really, but now we do.
Yeah, I guess.
That is a slob. That at the end of that dinner scene, Data gives a real fake wink thing that I thought was pretty amusing.
Yeah.
I thought Brent Spiner was pretty excellent in this, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
He was, yeah.
So then we get to our B story, where the Enterprise is entering a nebula, and the fading into the nebula effect they did was not good.
If you guys can wake me up when you're done talking about this, that'd be great.
It's a shame.
My only note about the B plot for now. It immediately goes back to Jenna.
I'll just say that in general, I managed not to follow exactly what was going on or how it was resolved or something. Just it was nebulous, as he was joking before.
I was going to say I wasn't going to use that pun, but they start off with dark matter nebula, which dark matter I don't really understand, but a little bit. I probably understand dark matter better than nebula. But I looked up. I was like, yeah, are nebulas actually a problem in space? And I guess they can be, because some of them can coalesce into a star, and some of them are stars that are stretching out. But I guess we really don't know what it does to a starship yet, because we really don't have much data on stuff passing through them. But there isn't anything inherently dangerous about a nebula.
Data? You don't have much data passing through them?
Yeah.
But
no, I think this nebula, there was a very specific local disturbance that caused things basically to go out of phase with this reality or dimension.
Yeah, I don't think a nebula in general. I'm not to look up the actual definition of that, because I was thinking, isn't that really just
I don't think every nebula does that. I think the specific nebula had something in it that did that. They made a point of saying, like, this was unexpected. This wasn't just any nebula they went into.
And again, they get to with nebulas, they can be like, well, this one does this, and this one it's kryptonite. It's red kryptonite, green kryptonite, whatever stuff. And I think it will always suffer to me because obviously the Wrath of Khan is, that nebula is the nebula of all nebulas. So
that becomes the Genesis world.
Yeah, exactly, and that makes sense actually, and from based on the little Wikipedia reading and stuff I did last night about whether nebulas will kill me.
But see, here's the thing, Stephen. Do you know nebulas can't do this? How many nebulas have you actually been in?
Exactly. I don't. Yeah.
I didn't even realize you were making a connection to other mentions of nebulas within the Star Trek.
Oh yeah.
We know if you take a nebula and you blow up a bomb in the middle of it, it makes a star and a habitable planet. That's proven. Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3.
Only the purple ones, though.
Only that specific type.
So my alternate title from around that time was Date So date dash
I got it. It was funny.
Thank you.
I liked it. So after we see the nebula, we go back to Jenna, and she's suddenly totally smitten with him. She was touching his arm in the previous, but now she's like, oh, well, he's kind and polite to me, so I'm in love with him. It doesn't matter that he has no feelings. My only question about that was, why has this never happened to Data before? He's been around a few decades. There are enough women like Jenna. This surely has happened to him before.
Right.
Maybe just none of the other ones were brash enough to pursue it. But again, I know a number of women like that would have pursued it. I feel like Data would be easy pickings that somebody should have tried this by now.
That's a good point, but I mean, also it's just there are too many possible variables and factors and so on. And it's just somebody who was assigned in a certain way. Maybe they had to be in the same team, and I don't know.
Well,
I
think it should have definitely happened at the academy when he was first turned on.
Yeah, I know we've discussed this to a certain extent, but just from the concept of I'm going to have sex with that android and see how he functions.
Oh,
that alone, I don't even. I mean, they don't. I could see them not even caring about love, and it wouldn't even necessarily have to be a woman.
True.
True. That's excellent points there.
Data would be just as willing to pursue a homosexual or asexual relationship. A non-gendered relationship, because to him it's all the same.
And I'm unfairly genderizing there because I'm like, well, if there was a guy, he'd be down to get with Data, and I'm sure it's equal on both sides. But yeah,
those are two very important points just right there. Just don't realize why I hadn't thought about them before. Just first of all, yeah, I mean, you would think that there would be people who would just be curious enough to try to do it anyway and be aggressive about it.
Yep,
they're just not showing it. And secondly, yes, because of course the time period in which this was produced, it was always implied that Data is heterosexual. Or the interactions with him are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Data is not sexual at all. He just is. Yeah, I guess maybe in the 24th century, because humanity and mankind are supposed to be better, that women like Jenna are rare. I guess that's the only way I can make that make sense in my mind. But. And I'm not saying it's just women that are like that. There are definitely aggressive men that overstep too. Yeah. Just from my perspective as a straight male who has interacted with women, I feel like I know that type of woman.
I'm sure there are plenty of women in my past that can tell you I've been
Stephen's a Jenna?
I'm sure I've had my Jenna moments. Actually, I've been told I've had my Jenna moments by some of these women. So, and I, on review, correct. They were right.
So Data tells Guinan about this thing and tells her that he had a very passionate kiss with Jenna. I'm sorry, that was not at all passionate.
Didn't seem like it.
No.
I think, maybe that wasn't the best way to term that, but I got the meaning that he meant that it was something that was meant to be romantic or express certain kinds of affection as beyond just like platonic.
Yeah. When Spot is found in the hallway outside Data's door, did anybody else immediately think she's stalking him and going into his apartment when he's not home?
Yep.
Oh,
that was my first thought.
That was my note about the nebula thing. Mm-hmm. I said that initially that's what I thought, and I went back to write that because that we saw something in Picard's the ready room, right? Or his
office.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, oh, we got a mystery. That's nice. I like that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It would make sense that the cat did it too. Knocked all the
I guess
off.
the door disappeared and the cat wandered through it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Geordi's up on all the gossip on the ship because Data mentions Jenna. He's like, oh yeah, wasn't she dating that guy?
That didn't occur to me.
Yeah, for this whole next section, I just kind of wrote little mini reviews of how good or bad their advice was.
Yes.
So like Geordi, I thought gave good advice because as he's giving it, I'm like, should this guy be giving advice? And at the end, he's like, you know what? I'm not the guy to ask.
But before you move on, my favorite thing about that was I was surprised at there's just that little bit of a hesitation, and the turn was that it wasn't anything about Data being an android. It was just perfectly just like boom, just immediately. This is the same advice I would give to another human being asking me this question.
Right. Riker's the same way. He gives the exact expected response that he would give to anybody that came to him for romance advice, which is just do it. Obviously, do it. Do it. What are you waiting for?
And I wrote down for Riker, this is what Geordi meant by, I'm not the one to give this advice. He was thinking of Riker.
Yes.
No, it's funny. It's funny you should say that too, because when he said that, I started to think, maybe he means Riker. But no, of course, they meant Troy. At least the writers meant you to think of Troy at first. But
But Data went to Worf, so he's asking literally everyone at that point.
Yeah.
Worf threatening him seemed a little odd, because I guess the reason why she was working in the torpedo bay with Data is because she's a security officer, so she's working on the weapon. But that's not clear. So it's like something you figure out after the fact. Oh yeah, Worf is her boss, whereas really it seems like she's probably an engineer at first.
Well, yeah, he did say it, but yes, that I didn't think through the inconsistencies until you said that.
But I thought his was fun until he took the turn, and then it was like, oh, okay. But it still shows who he is, kind of.
Yeah. Picard had the best though, where he's like, "Sure, you can ask me, and I'd be happy to tell you my advice on women as soon as I have some to tell you."
God, he needed like a piano or a cigar or something to play him off that. Just that little kind of a.
I mean, so that's like Picard's big moment in the episode, or at least for the A plot.
Yeah.
But he was a little bit busy because this episode was directed by somebody named Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart directed this episode. Yep. So, yeah, that's probably why Picard's in it so little.
I thought his advice was accurate and honest. But yeah, I guess he went to Frakes and was like, hey, how hard is this? And Frakes was like, oh, he didn't say how hard it is, but he asked him about it. He was like, yeah, you'll love it. You should do it. So.
And they've become a long tradition of Star Trek actors directing. I mean, LeVar Burton directs. I don't know how many of the other TNG, but most of the DS9 and Voyager actors direct at some point. And a lot of Trek actors that you don't see on screen anymore have made careers directing post-Trek. And Jonathan Frakes, of course, is primarily a director these days, and he's directing all the new Star Trek. So he's constantly back on set. I mean, he directed a couple of their films, like Nimoy. He was like a go-to director for them, and he still is. So, I think he did a good job directing.
Troy's advice was the worst.
Yeah.
It was a very I don't really know what to tell you, so I'm going to give you some flowery things, and then... Well, no, I take that back. The worst advice was from Jenna, to which I wrote, should the woman who stayed with Jeff be the best to give advice on relationships? Answer, no, she's not.
Mm-hmm. For the audience who is not watching this on video, in case you couldn't hear, there were some air quotes there around Jeff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keith.
So after Data gets all this advice, he goes back to Jenna, and he is so beyond stiff and his like reaching out a hand, the hug and stuff. And I'm like, when he acts, he copies other actors. When he plays music, he copies other musicians. When he goes to romance a girl, he doesn't think to copy like Riker or somebody on the holodeck that he watches. That
might be the part the most I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't.
Was that the writer or was that Patrick Stewart? I guess since we have a name of the director, were they telling him to play it for comedy, play it stiff and like, oh, you don't know what you're doing? Or
my guess is Brett Spiner. He's naturally a comedic guy.
Maybe. I mean,
it's funny. It's legitimately funny, and I can see why writer, director, actor, all of them probably agreed this was the best approach. It just doesn't make sense.
I think there are ways for him to be stiff there and not that stiff and still hit the joke. But
you're sacrificing continuity for the sake of comedy, and this isn't a comedy show, so it stands out.
Yeah.
If Family Guy did that, you're like, okay, whatever. Family Guy's going to go for whatever joke they can grab, right?
That makes perfect. That's a great way of putting it, though, about the continuity versus comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like that time on Family Guy where they were talking about Star Trek.
And a cutaway. Yep.
Thank you.
That's where somebody should have jumped in with their Peter impression, talking about Star Trek. I can't do impressions, or I would have.
I haven't worked on my Peter, so.
So then we go to Picard's.
You
haven't
worked on your Peter, huh, Keith?
And there goes our.
That's what she said.
Not explicit designation as podcast. Is this the scene where they blow kisses, or he blows her a kiss?
I don't know. I think that's later.
Okay, I'll save that for that.
No, the next scene that happens is they go to Picard's office, and Picard's stuff's under the desk, and so he calls Worf in to scan it with his tricorder, and Picard suggests that it could be a poltergeist.
Yeah.
Which, again, is absolutely ridiculous. It makes no sense for the character, and yet I found that one a lot more acceptable than Data's thing. Partially because you get the idea that Picard just may be messing with Worf, because that Worf gives him that angry reaction. Picard's like, okay, so not a poltergeist.
Yeah, I assumed he was just being facetious or just throwing things out there. They're wacky, but
My question is, why was there an empty cup and saucer under the desk? Because we know when Picard finishes his Earl Grey, he puts it back in the replicator. He's not Jenna. He's not a slob. I think they just wanted more stuff on the floor.
Yeah.
He was raised in a barn, but it was a French barn. So.
Right. It was a vineyard.
Yeah.
Dana analyzing the art I actually enjoyed that scene quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the sculpture. And he was doing a really good job reading her body language of, well, this has good lighting. Okay, but that's not the best place because there are other considerations. Okay, more central, it's more meaningful. And he looks at her again. Okay, like he was reading her there, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, or see that was an example of the scene being played well. That was an example of like how a competent AI companion would probably behave in that situation. And the way that she I don't know if she ever really apologized out. She certainly didn't do it outwardly, but I think she realized that I'm going to have to spell out the things that I want, and I shouldn't feel bad about that. I shouldn't try to make him feel bad about that. Mm-hmm. These are just things that just have to be done.
Yep.
And still left the interaction not seeming like she was upset about it, but like, that's not so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think many women feel like they have to spell things out for them. Actually, I shouldn't just say many women. Many people feel like they have to spell things out for their partners.
But I mean, that's what communication should be in many cases. And I think that the problem is that we're taught to rely too much on, I want to say zeitgeist for lack of a better term, popular culture, things that you think people should know because of whatever you have seen or have heard. And they just keep all those things hidden and just like, oh my God, this person doesn't know anything. Oh my, they're so stupid. Why would I have to say this? And,
the myth that if I can read your mind, then there's some kind of magic here rather than, no, I just got lucky and or whatever. Yeah.
That's why they say communication's key to a good relationship. Yep. Makes total sense.
That's what they say.
In theory, it's the key.
There it is.
But really, it's just a matter of perspective. So then the planet disappears. So it's like a whole Brigadoon planet, apparently. Which makes sense because it's a love story.
Of course.
Then Data comes back, and he's a hell of a lot smoother, but it just really comes across as creepy.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I started thinking about what you were saying before about the whole. It felt like he was almost imitating Riker.
Yeah,
I will say in certain moves and certain aspects, and this is what you would have wondered why he didn't do that before, like the stiff, awkward hug. So they're playing it again comedically, like here's one extreme, here's the other.
Mm-hmm.
And but this one ended with the thing where he's saying, "But there is no real romantic me," and that makes this hit home a little better.
That part I think I was okay with. Everything before that was where I wrote, oh, we got to men are from women or whatever. Men are from
well, men are from women.
Mars, women are from Venus. Men are from women, which is true. I just didn't. Those two scenes back to back, I just didn't like. And Jenna's not great in them either.
Which scene is Jenna great in?
Check my notes.
None is the correct answer.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
No.
I feel like that's unfair, although I need to think if I can find some counter examples. Anyway,
Fine, you date her.
the actress, I don't know if she's doing a good job or not. I don't know if she was just told to act annoying and awful.
Right.
And maybe she's playing annoying and awful great. Maybe this isn't her real personality.
Well, I wrote, and this is, this would be a terrible thing. It is a terrible thing to say, but I think Data dodged a bullet.
Yes.
I mean, she might be a good security officer, but nothing about her was great to me. I mean,
and he would have gone along indefinitely.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the sad
none of us want to see her again, right? We don't want to go on a date with her either.
No.
So it's not sad at the end. It's like, okay, this makes sense. This relationship was not going to work.
My alternate episode is not that he continues to date her. My alternate episode is Tasha Yar didn't die, even though I don't like her. And Data actually dated her and had a real relationship with her as much as he could have. And they explored it that way. Kind of the same way that Penny Johnson-Gerald and Isaac on The Orville explored. Yeah. I would have liked to have seen Tasha and Data explore in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
That's better than mine. Because I think when they go to all this relationship isn't going to work, I think that's when the episode gets less interesting and falls apart. Because at the end of the day, it makes sense. Like we're saying, it's like, it makes sense. This relationship is not going to work. And I will say when she says, again, this is a clumsy one too, when she's like, well, I realize I go for men who are incapable of emotion or whatever. I was just like, wow, that's just such a
little too on the nose.
It's too on the nose. I think she's right. I mean, it's good that she's, reflecting on her part in this, but it just seemed too easy to me.
Yeah, because we know, again, knowing women like this, they're not going to be that self-aware, and if they are, then they're going to change their mind the next day.
Right. Yeah. So my alternate episode was the relationship actually develops and it actually goes well, and then if it ended up, they split up, then maybe it is a sad moment. But the end of this episode is sad. The Ashara episode that made me sad. This one did not.
I just want to go back a bit because during that the smooth scene is when I reflected that I thought this was starting to do a good job of exploring, the trope of sci-fi sex companion AI bot, whatever, the things that people probably have these fantasies about. And we've seen them brief glimpses of in other properties. The person would have had to have theoretically programmed the AI to respond in certain ways. So in the first scene, we saw him acting all stiff and awkward. Later, we saw him responding automatically to what she was giving for body language. And then eventually we see him going a little too far and being too smooth. And he was essentially, it was almost like just a full service Roomba or something. Just, I'm going to come in and clean your house, tell you all the things you want to hear, try to seduce you in a certain way and do all these things I think that you want because I know that you say that you want these things. And then it just becomes too hollow. It was like saying like all the strengths and weaknesses in one scene, like right there. And it felt like he was close, but just, yeah.
So you think it has to be hollow, or do you think there's any way to build an AI that is so responsive that it doesn't feel hollow?
I think it's going to be going to vary from person to person. And I think that if a person enters, all right, I think that the difference is in her case, she thought that she realized what she was doing. She saw in him something that seemed close enough to being a real person that she was going to go, that, it was pre-made and was there. Let's go do this. He's already doing this much. Surely he can do these other things. Whereas most of the customers we see in these other movies and things, and people in real life, if they think about it, they know with their eyes open, they're getting an AI, they're getting a robot, and they're expecting it to do exactly what they want when they want. And they're probably accepting some of the negatives of that or willing to try to work through them in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll talk more about that when we get to the ranking stuff. But yeah, I'm interested in that topic. for sure.
Yeah, and that's where I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but I thought that at the end when he delivers that line where he's like, "I'm going to delete that program,"
Ooh.
I thought that was a good line. Again, I feel like it's wasted on Jenna, but I can't speak for everyone, but I think a lot of us when our relationship ends, again, I'm going to go back to my Requiem from Methuselah example. Forget. I think we would all love to, when we have a tumultuous end to a relationship, especially one where we felt invested in some way. I think we want to delete that program.
But we don't want the other person to delete the program. We don't want the other person to forget about you. And that line is cold and mean, unintentionally so.
Yeah. Because I think
I put it that it was chilling. Just that whole thing was just like
she's not going to want him to use that same subroutine on somebody else. That would be hurtful too. But to say I'm just going to delete it, that's almost like I'm not worth remembering. That's rough.
Yeah, which I guess is Eternal Sunshine is Spotless Mind.
God,
yeah.
I was.
So in my mind, and this is, I guess, my whole running thing for Data is modify that program, not necessarily for her, but because we were just talking about how stiff he is. But if he's really AI and he's learning, he could modify that program, and I know every woman is a snowflake and is a flower, every person or whatever. So every person's different, but still he can modify what he was doing isn't going to work with anybody in the galaxy. So I just think he would continue to do that. Not, because I think Data would he's actually just the fact that he's attentive and listens and is nice. I think he's ahead of a good part of the field already.
Oh, he's a catch.
Yeah, exactly. So
again, we'll talk about when we get to the rankings.
Again, Jenna is not worthy. So
there are two bits from this episode that get played in clip packages frequently when they do like next gen retrospective type things. I think the line about delete the program should be what gets played. What gets played instead is the line where she asks him, "What were you thinking about during that kiss?" And he gives the list.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's fine, but I would rather get that. I deleted the program.
You know what? I have a note on it. She asked for honesty. He gave it to her.
Yeah.
Is that what you wanted or not? And sometimes that's not what people actually want, even if they ask for it. But I wrote, and this would probably apply to me, I'm pretty sure then, and maybe sometimes now, but the old bit used to be, if you're a beginner, if you're just getting into the romantic game, teenagers, whatever, if you're with a lady, you're supposed to think about other things. You do not want to focus on the matter at hand. You need to think about baseball scores.
Yeah, I was going to say baseball.
I was going to say it's just not a fair measurement to take a snapshot and list the things. A more fair measurement would be like, do you think about me more than you think about other people? Like, how often do you think about me? And I think she would have been much more pleased with that answer because clearly Data's devoting a significant amount of attention and resources into pleasing her.
Yeah, and so
even said
she
that.
Didn't appreciate it.
About that list. I think it's really about, again, the intent and expectations going into the relationship. I think if you actually purchased an AI or a simulation to do something like that for you, you wouldn't have as many illusions about how the sausage is being made, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't think to yourself, this computer is listing off this poetry about me in its head and how much it loves or whatever. It's just, this is making me feel the way I want to feel because it is, it's the end product is there.
Yeah.
Well, and it's Data, so he can do all that and think about you, Jenna.
Yeah, this isn't something so magical that human beings don't do this either. I mean, it's
right.
Whether or not you're intentionally thinking about baseball scores or something. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it works. You don't kiss someone and think to yourself,
I'm kissing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just things pop into your head. They move around, and
Mm-hmm.
I think more often early in the relationship, you're focused on them.
Yes.
There's
and
that
if
too.
He can't even focus on her this early, then he's never going to.
That's also a good point. Yeah, I suppose like early, it is like, oh my God, this is happening. That's like a first few times sort of thing, but then.
Well, and so when they were kissing, she was thinking about, well, what's he thinking about me instead of thinking about him?
Yes.
And she's the ultimate, what are you thinking about? Don't ask that question. Don't ask that question if you don't want the answer. If into the security tapes you go, only pain you will find. The wise words of Yoda once again.
Oh my God. I couldn't place that. And
at this point of the episode where the B plot takes over for a while, we kind of end the Data Jenna story early so they can deal with the nebula. Down in engineering, somebody gets blasted from a panel, and Geordi doesn't call sick bay. He calls the bridge. Why don't you get your poor crewman help and then alert the bridge?
They'll deal with it. It's all encompassing.
And then that's the second thing that gets played in clip shows is the woman half buried in the deck.
That effect I really like. That's the most interesting thing, hands down, to me, of the whole nebula thing. It was just creepy and just, And
it would have been so much worse if it was Spot's tail that got stuck.
Ooh. That would have gotten some letters.
Picard insists on piloting the shuttle instead of Data because it's all about reaction time.
Huh. That
should have been Data.
My note on that was, I noted that Riker tried to just volunteer for it again, shuttle duty. I like the line where he was talking about how he's supposed to be taking the risk instead of the captain.
Right.
Then it occurred to me that since they had dropped those storylines about like, why isn't Will moving on? He should be, being a captain somewhere else. I like that they've just sort of dropped him in to just sort of be comedic Riker for a bit in places where he's needed and things like this. And it occurred to me that maybe that was one of the reasons why he wouldn't want to be a captain somewhere else, because he likes being able to take these kinds of risks that a captain wouldn't be able to.
But captain has the prerogative to override the first officer and take the risk when they want to.
Yeah, but
it still should have just been Data. There's no reason to put Picard out there. Fastest reflexes. That's what you need. When the shuttle spun out of control, I liked now would be a good time, Mr. O'Brien, from Picard as he's waiting to beam. And I did like Riker's solution of, okay, we're close enough to the edge. I don't care anymore. Just make a run for it. I think that was the right decision at the right time.
That reminds me, with the shuttle, they're like Spinal Tap drummers. They're just like dispensable. Like, well, we lost another one. Hey, can you send over? It was a nebula thing and it blew up.
Every time they go to the starbase, they refill the shuttles.
They have to.
Yeah,
they have to.
My greatest Gen guys made the point in a recent podcast where it was Riker and the ambassador were in the shuttle and they got attacked. And they're like, we knew something bad was going to happen because Data was giving us way too many details of shuttle has left the bay. Shuttle has cleared the shields. And in this one, I really noticed it because, again, they were like, shuttle's done this. Shuttle's in this position. I'm like, yep. They really telegraph it. And then the end, we get Data cuddling with this cat, which, that's better than eating a pint of ice cream. That's just going to make it feel better, even an android who doesn't have feelings.
That I did appreciate.
I think I put that too. Just the idea, it's were they going for humor there with the now he's a single spinster and he has a cat or something, that kind of thing. Or
I can see that, and then Data's relationship with Spot is interesting because we're told over and over again he doesn't have feelings, he doesn't care about people, but he's going through the motions with a cat, and the cat likes him. So
yeah.
But cats like anybody that gives them attention and food, and they don't really care. So
unlike humans, humans are so much more sophisticated.
A dog would not be as understanding of Data, I think.
Perhaps.
It's possible.
Do you have any fashion notes?
Fashion? I do not, actually. I guess
the Nebula looked pretty well dressed. No, I don't.
Yeah, the Nebula just always makes you think again of Khan, which is fine, and it always creates good shots, whether they're evocative or not. But my only note I had left was when Data blows her a kiss.
Yeah,
and I think she catches it. I've never been good at either of those. I've never been good at.
It was the other way around, wasn't it? She blew him a kiss and he caught it, or did it come back?
Oh, maybe it was that way. Either way, I've never been good at that. I don't even understand. I barely understand the concept, which may explain why I'm not good at it. But beggars cannot be choosers, which is the way Jenna should live. And I bet she went back to that Jeff.
Probably.
Oh man, I laughed the hardest during that breakup scene. Just Data's swerves. He got me twice about the. Then perhaps we should begin our meal. Like the just going through the thing about like I can see that something is wrong. I think something's want to talk about something. Okay, well, time to eat. Twice, and I loved that so much.
I found it heartbreaking and moving, and it's a clear demonstration of how little he understands.
But the lines themselves and the way they delivered and the timing was so perfect. They caught me off guard both times. And
Miner has impeccable timing. I'll give you that.
And I think that could go either way. One, he either doesn't understand, or I guess an even more comedic thing would be, let's eat, so you can't break up with me. It's a Costanza thing, like, as long as we're eating, you can't break up with me, or whatever kind of thing.
Amazing, yes.
I did have 2 other notes. My alternate title for the episode was "He's Not That Into You," and and my other thing was, we got there right off the bat. We got there even before we turned on the mics. This is, in theory, is the new matters of perspective on which all been checked before.
The use of the term program. So we're going about I'm deleting the program. That to me was another example of how an AI probably would not work. You wouldn't have like this discrete thing that he could just remove. It would almost certainly be something that's incorporated into his learning process. It would just, I'm certainly put there either solely for effect or because the writer didn't quite understand how that would work, or probably a little both.
Data's just not that advanced of an android. He still uses separate subroutines for everything.
He has a floppy disk or something where he can just.
Yep. Because I go back again and I will continue to the legacy episode with Ashara, because I feel like at the end, Data has learned something, whereas in this episode, I don't get that impression that he did. And I guess he's not perfect, so maybe he doesn't always learn, but he learned in that one.
Sorry,
so maybe because it was tied to the mission and other aspects.
I mean, if I were building an AI, if you're building most programs, you don't build them to think of things in terms of subroutines. I mean, that might be what's happening under the scenes, but it's more object oriented. They wouldn't think of it as like, I'm putting this procedure here to do this thing. It is, it's more overarching. Like, I am learning how to do this for this purpose. I mean, that's the way he normally talks. I think they really did just throw these things in here just to make it more jarring for the human-android relationship.
I would disagree with Steven's point that he didn't learn anything. I think he learned quite a bit. Maybe not enough to be a good romantic partner, but I think he learned things about his limitations.
And to be fair, maybe we don't see it in this episode because it ends just as he's been served.
You're right. I don't know that this episode gives us a good idea of what he learned, but I think he's definitely learned something.
That's fair.
Annoyance. Is it across the board?
Yep. Oh, well, I can't speak for Keith, but it is for me.
It's not Spot.
Chloe,
I don't know.
Chloe will protest.
No, it's this. I really had not thought it through, but I can't think of a better answer.
I mean, you could choose Keiko for being way too excited about socks. You could choose Picard for choosing to take the shuttle, even though there was no reason for him to. There's other options. Yeah. You could choose Geordi for being in on all the ship's gossip for some reason.
You could choose Jeff.
No, I was about to say it. I'm choosing Jeff.
You're going with Jeff? Okay. Yeah. Who are you gonna have a drink with?
Jeff.
Are you really?
Yeah.
That actually makes sense too.
I didn't. I didn't have anything. I started with Jenna at the beginning of the episode, and then I was like, well, maybe I still have a drink with her just to see what's up. And I was like, nope, I'm going to see Jeff. What is the deal?
Why do you keep putting back to her?
Yeah. Come on.
It would be interesting to hear the other perspective, because that is what is a matter of, just to hear what he thought about how the relationship actually went. If he learned anything.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to choose Data, and here's why. I think I've done a little chatting with an AI app on my phone just to see like how good it would think and develop, and it's nowhere near what Data is. But I would really enjoy having an AI that was responsive to me and learned my preferences, and I would assume that Data would make himself physically attractive to me if he were trying to build a relationship with me. So would look very different. But because I'm sure he could change his appearance the way, he picked Law's appearance. So I'm going to have a drink with Data, but a Data that's focused on a relationship with me and is going to appear female and attractive to my mind, as well as serve all of my sexual interests and needs.
I would have had a drink with Lieutenant Van Mater, but then they killed him. So, yeah.
Morgan and I first saw Her, the movie,
Joaquin
Phoenix. We came out of the theater. I was like, I think I could fall in love with an AI. And she's like, yeah, you probably would.
Actually, for my drink, I would probably pick Data for different reasons. Simply just
okay.
because I would probably would want to encourage him about what happened if I knew more about what was going on and explain why this wasn't what he thought it was.
To try again.
Yeah, or something.
Okay.
Or not to try, but at least not to say it was a failing on his part necessarily.
Okay, fair enough. Keith, we're going to you first on ranking the episode. Better or worse than Legacy?
How far from Legacy is the top? Because we should probably start there.
Well, Legacy's number 17 of 24 at the moment.
Probably worse. I mean, I feel like you don't think that the Tasha, our sister episode?
I didn't like that episode.
Yeah,
interesting.
I'm high on that one. You guys are low.
Well, it sounds like Keith is going to help you push this below it. I would have gone above. I wouldn't have gone much further. Remember Me's above that, and the Night Terrors. I think I would have passed both of them. Future Imperfect, that's about where I'd have trouble, either above or below. I might put it above Future Imperfect, so I'd put it number 14 for the season thus far.
It's difficult for me to do qualitative comparisons, especially for like everything that is encompassed within like one episode.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, I do like the concepts it's exploring and how it got there in some ways, but when you compare it to Legacy back to back, I feel like there was more going on in that one, just volume wise, like actual. Yeah.
I would argue there wasn't more going on. I found that one boring, and I liked both the plots on this one. I think Spiner saved this one for me, but there were a lot of things that did not add up or make sense. So that's why I'm even starting this low. So below Legacy is Final Mission. Better or worse? This is up to you guys now. I'm out. I put it like 4 spots above.
Wow.
I didn't put it high, but I put it like 4 spots above this.
I mean, I'm not even convinced that it should be this low at this point.
Okay.
But it's just I don't know.
It's tricky because Legacy I think should be higher, so I definitely think it should be lower. But I would put it above. But you're always going to run into that.
Is that where you guys want to put it? Below Legacy, but above Final Mission?
Yeah, I think we'll pair these Data episodes together.
Okay. We'll put it in here at number 18 of 25 thus far. It needed to be in the bottom half for sure.
It felt like a bottom middle top. Bottom middle.
Bottom middle top. Bottom middle top middle. Next week, the season finale, Redemption. We're going to be live in person together, not on the podcast. That podcast will go out like 7 to 8 months. But we're going to be in a room together for the first time since late season 3 of TNG. We've done more than a whole season remotely. We are still going to try to do a video for the Patreon donors. We're going to set up a tripod and a cell phone, just one video feed. We'll see how it looks. We'll see how it sounds. It may not be great. It may be fine. I don't know. But we'll try to have some video for the Patreon, and we're going to do the season finale and the season wrap-up live and in person together. But if you think the audio is better on Zoom and you prefer the Zoom, no worries. We're probably still going to do most of our episodes on Zoom now. We're going to do some in person, including the season finale Redemption, where both Captain Picard and Lieutenant Worf must decide where their priorities lie as the Klingon Empire descends into a bitter civil war. And this episode is just called Redemption, but the season premiere of season 5 is called Redemption Part 2. So like Best of Both Worlds, we ended on another cliffhanger. I'm all there for a Klingon Civil War. I feel like it's slowly been brewing for 2 seasons. I'm ready to see it happen.
Well, we learned from this spy that some other people did agree with that as well. Some people were glad that Duras was gone.
I would be a season or a season and a half ago, I would have been a lot less interested in this episode than I am now. So
Really?
Yeah, it's been a slow coming around to the Klingons for me. But,
well, Guinan's back. Whoopi's back next week.
All right.
Gowron is back. Tony Todd is back as Kern, Worf's brother.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And we get to meet the Duras sisters next week. Lursan Vientor.
Yeah. Oh, I wish you hadn't. I'll probably forget by then, but still.
I'm excited about that. I was going to say Kalar, but I'm glad you brought them up. So
as well as the shadowy Romulan, who is still listed as uncredited on IMDb, will be back. So there's a lot going on. I'm super excited about it.
That all sounds pretty good.
Until then, live long.
Even if you're single. And prosper.
Or space mad.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?
the on-call period is supposed to last 2 weeks. So theoretically, they could do that. But
yeah, they could. In theory, they could. Yeah.
Oh.
There it is. You're gonna hear a lot of that in the next hour. Not just the next hour, probably the next couple of weeks.
Months, years. I mean, it is all a matter of perspective.
No.
But is there in truth no beauty? Wait, we haven't used that one.
It is one of my favorite titles.
Spock's frame.
For the world is hollow and I have touched the sky.
I wish
that an actual one?
More casual conversation.
Yeah, it's also my favorite Jimi Hendrix song. Who mourns for Adonis?
Not me.
Adonis's mother, I guess. Mrs. Adonis.